Hello, everybody, and welcome to One Question with Pastor Adam. And I am Adam, and I am pastor to believers and to doubters, to unfaithful Christians and faithful atheists. And here we are, going to talk about some questions. What are we going to talk about today? That's the title of this episode. And maybe if you're listening to the podcast, I've come up with a better title. But I don't have a whole lot for us today. I woke up this morning with a sore throat and a bit of a headache, and so I think this is going to be a short-ish episode. So if you've got comments, questions, and you're watching the live show, let me know. If you've got a topic that you want to discuss today, let me know, and we'll do just kind of like a mailbag episode today. So a live, I guess a Q&A would be better to talk about it. So I don't know how much I've got in me today, but thank you for being here. It's always good to be here. I was listening, Cliff, good morning to you. I was just on Facebook, and one of my friends who has been on the show before, Jonathan Foster, we talked about mimetic theory and theology, and that was fun. So he made this really great theological post today, which says this: I'm made in God's image, which means God likes nachos. Oh, I am made in God's image, and God likes nachos. I love nachos, so God must love nachos too. Yeah, Cliff, I saw you responded to that post on Jonathan's page. So good. This relates a little bit to what I want to talk about today. It is about your infinite worth, created in God's own image, the sacredness of your life, and you matter. Your life is sacred. And it's easy to forget that in this world, which can beat us down. And so I'm just here today to remind you of what Jonathan Foster has reminded me, that you are made in God's image. And that means God must like nachos. Who doesn't like nachos? Seriously. Anyway, this whole made in God's image thing is so important and often uh, difficult for us, or not difficult, but we miss the ancient cultural context often of what this means to be made in God's image. It was used, the image of God was used to talk about pharaohs and kings. You would never say that anybody else was in the image of God or a child of God throughout the ancient world. It was always like, powerful political leaders. And so when the book of Genesis says that God created you and me and all humans in the image of God, it was this way of universalizing the image of God in all of us, not just in the rich and the powerful political leaders, but in just common people, people like you and me, made in God's very image with sacred, holy worth. So, good afternoon, Melanie. So, friends, if you've got comments or questions, feel free to put those in the chat section, and we may talk about them today. But I was going along with this. I was listening to Rob Bell on the Robcast this week, and he had this one phrase, or one statement that he made. It was kind of like a throwaway line or idea, but he said that for those of us who have dogs, to go up to your dog, hold their face, and say, "You're doing really great." You're doing really great. And he says this will change your relationship with your dog. So I've been doing that with Mac the dog, the last couple of days, just going up to Mac and holding his face and saying, Mac, you're doing really great. You're doing really great. And it feels good to say that to my dog. It feels good to come like face to face with my dog and say, you are doing so great. And it got me thinking that why don't I say that to myself more often? Why don't I say that to myself? It sounds kind of cheesy, right? Like this kind of positive self talk. But the older that I get, the more I'm like, maybe there's something to this thing. Because saying to myself, Adam, you're doing really great in a world that can be really difficult. And, you know, you always, your self worth, the image of God that is supposed to, that invites us to see the sacred worth that we have and that everybody else has and to share in that sacred worth. It's not something that our culture really fosters in us. We have to keep up with the Joneses. We have to purchase the right things. In a capitalistic culture, it's, keeping up with, keeping up with the Joneses and in order to have self-worth. And how do I work against that? I think part of it is just that kind of self-talk. Adam, you're doing a good job. You're doing great. So maybe you need to hear that you're doing great too. And life may be good for you right now, maybe difficult for you right now, but you're doing great. We're getting through this thing. We are coming up to Holy Week. This Sunday is Palm Sunday. And next Friday, when we have the show, it's going to be Good Friday. So I'll probably say more about Good Friday then. But Good Friday is the day. What's good about Good Friday? That's the question. It's the day when Jesus ultimately reveals that God is on our side, and we can do the worst to God that we can, and God is still going to be on our side and has always been on our side. So God says you're doing good, even when we feel like we're not. God loves you. Yeah, we've been doing the Jesus is Woke series the last couple of weeks, and I was listening to a couple of episodes to see if I agreed with what I said, and yeah, I did. Adam, you're doing great. You're doing great. And I was listening to the episode on the Gospel of Luke, where Jesus says that God is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Ooh, man, that's a transformation right there. If God is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked, then God is kind to me and kind to you and wants what's best for you and for me. So, all right, here we are. Luke, Free Palestine. Let's go. So, those of you joining a little late, I woke up this morning with a headache and a sore throat, and here we are doing the best we can. Adam, you're doing a good job, right? I was like, maybe I should take the day off from one question, but I just love being here with all of you. Luke, Free Palestine, Tree. It's always good to see you, Tree. Going to say that the next time my lap is catted, yes. Oh, yes. Say it to your cat as well. Yeah, if you got a cat, say, you're doing a great job, cat. Yeah. Karen, good afternoon to you. Great to have you here, Karen, always, as always. Melanie says, I always put my forehead to my dog's forehead and tell him that he's a really good boy and that I love him. Feels good to do that. Feels good to do that. Luke says, call your senators now and reverse defunding UNRWA. Let's do that. I like that, Luke. Thank you. Thank you. Jessica says, God is dog spelled backwards. I was just going to say that. That went right through my mind, Jessica. Here we go. I'm not surprised. We can learn about God from our dogs. Yeah. Yeah. It's good. All right. Okay. Luke says, Jesus was crucified in Palestine. Yep. Call our senators. It's good. Yep. Jesus. Yep. Jesus was woke and a Palestinian Jew. Amen to that. Like, love how you put that. So, yeah, Luke is inviting us to call our senators now, and it's good stuff. Cliff, you're doing a great job too. Good afternoon, Lita. It's a pleasure being with all of you here. So, is that really all I got for today? I think it is. Was this worth doing? I don't know. But tell your pets they're doing great. Tell yourself you're doing great. Michael Garcia, member of the church, sent me a Facebook video. I forget who it was by, but it was basically saying um, this like positive affirmation talk that we can do for ourselves, and it was saying like if you do positive affirmation talk 3 to 6 times a day for 21 days, it changes your DNA. I don't know if that's true or not, or if there's scientific evidence for it. But it can do some radical things. I think this kind of pattern of being intentional about saying affirmative things to ourselves. I mean, the Bible says you're made in the image of God. That's a big deal. That is a big effing deal, right there. So, yeah, you have permission to do positive talk with yourself and with your pets. So, oh goodness. Yep. Jessica says, "You're all doing great. We can always do better together." Yeah. All right. Jessica says, "Probably changes your neural pathways, if I had to guess." Yeah, yes, that's good. Positive affirmations changing your neural pathways so that maybe you can do better self-talk. You get in the pattern of doing self-talk, and I don't know. I'm not a scientist. So, but always room for more positive self-talk. So, yeah, I mean, say a few more things about this. Uh, I talked about this a little bit last week with Jesus is woke in the Gospel of John, but I always find it worth repeating that the figure of Satan in the Bible is the accuser. And all of that self-talk that's like, accusations against us, trying to get us down. It's not God. It's not God. Oftentimes people will ask, "How do I know if I've heard the voice of God?" Well, I can tell you how you know if you have not heard the voice of God, or I can tell you the voice that is not God that is in my head and maybe in your head too. It's the voice of accusation. That's not God's voice. God's voice is the voice of love, affirmation. Satan's voice is the accuser, is the voice of accusation. You may have grown up with parents or teachers that had that kind of voice in your head. I'll tell you this story. Is this worth telling? Is this a good story to tell you? I don't know. When I was a sophomore in high school, I was in a math class. And what I noticed in high school, I was not a great student in high school, but my freshman year, had in high school, I had friends who were really smart. And this is not like an accusation against me in my high school years. I just wasn't a great student. I didn't like homework. I didn't do homework. I would much rather play basketball or hang out with my friends or play video games. And so I was a slacker for my first couple of years in high school. But I wore glasses, and so for some reason that I think, and because I hung out with smart kids, teachers thought that I was smart. I was in uh, science class, regular science class, and the honors science honors class teacher came into the classroom and said, "Hey, Adam, I think you should be in the honors class." And I was like, "Okay, all my friends are in that one." so, so I got switched over to the honors class, and I faked my way through it for a couple of weeks, and then I went up to him and turned something in, and he said, "I think we may have made a mistake." Oh, that's funny, and it was true. That's not the voice of accusation that I am talking about, but it was just a it's just a funny story that's kind of a setup for the next one. In my sophomore year, I, made it to trigonometry in math, and I was so lost. I had no clue what I was doing in that class, and apparently others didn't either. So, where there was this one math test that we had, and this teacher did the same math test every year, and so the previous year, students had their test, and one of the students in my class got hold of this test and was passing it around to everybody. And I was like, "Okay, I'm cheating. I'm gonna do this thing." And I was like, "Okay, don't do super well." Like, I was a C student in that class. So I was like, "Just get a B. Just do enough to get a B." And so that's what I did. And apparently a whole bunch of other kids did the same thing. So the teacher caught on to what we were doing and was not happy with us, and said, "Who did this? Who cheated? Which ones of you cheated?" And none of us raised our hands except for one person. After a while, uh, she raised her hand, and we were all like, "Why'd you do that?" Anyway, because she was more honest than the rest of us sophomore kids. Good for her. Good for her. But uh, the teacher ended up saying, I remember this so clearly, that we would not amount to anything in our lives. And I just, at the time, I just kind of, I don't know, I laughed it off. Didn't take him very seriously. Uh, he wasn't he wasn't somebody that I considered to be a great teacher. And you know, when I've told this story before, some people have been like, "Why would he do the same test year after year and not expect kids to cheat on this test?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point." But anyway, every once in a while, that voice, "You won't amount to anything," comes back into my head, and I just go back to my sophomore self, the little sophomore kid inside of me, and say, "Hey, man, maybe that wasn't the best decision that you've ever made in your life, but it doesn't define you. It doesn't mean that you won't amount to anything in your life. You can still do this thing. You can still get through this thing, right? You're going to have challenges. Sometimes you're going to do some stupid things in life. They don't define you. God's love defines you. You're made in the image of God. Pick yourself up. We can do better." And not in not in like a shaming way of my sophomore self. Like, call it like crowd behavior, call it whatever. All of my friends were doing it, so I can do it, whatever it is. That's understandable that I would get caught up in that kind of thing. And I still get caught up in crowd behavior. I mean, or groupthink, right? People often think groupthink is bad. You're just being part of the sheep. But hey, guess what? Like, here we are, and here I am. I don't know what you define yourself as. Like, I you're listening to this, so here we go. Like, if you're listening to this, you probably agree that Jesus says that the greatest commandments are to love God and to love your neighbor as you love yourself, and that might be what we should live our lives by. And hey, there's groupthink right there. Like, I need you to encourage me to love better in this world. And maybe you need me and others to encourage you to do that as well. Not like a shaming, again, not like, oh, you need to love better, right? But uh, just like, we can do this. We can get through this. A lot of bad things happening in the world right now. And we can get caught up in those bad things. Uh, but maybe those bad things can inspire us to enter into where we are in your life right now, in your context, and recognize the world needs more love, needs more loving God, loving neighbor as you love yourself. Okay, that's how this is going to wrap up. Cuz I just did it. I just did, like, love God and love your neighbor. And I think I left out love yourself when I first brought that up just a couple seconds ago. I don't know. Rewind the tape and let's see. Did I leave that out? Uh, because it's easy to forget the second part of that commandment, to love your neighbor. And then the second part is as you love yourself, right? You have permission to love yourself, to have positive affirmations, to replace the Satan's talk, the accuser's talk, to replace that with the talk of God, which is you are loved. You're always going to be loved. So hold your dog's face or your cat's face and say, you're doing a good job. And then look in the mirror. I know that sounds so cheesy. What was the SNL skit like in the early 90s, 80s, where the guy was like looking in the mirror saying positive things about themselves, and it was just super cheesy and funny. But you have permission to do it, to be a little cheesy. It's good. All right. So, okay. Melanie says, I love the way my dog looks at me. Oh, isn't it great? It melts my heart. Love it. Sharon says, please tell your family members that they too are doing great and tell them you are proud of them. Oh, Sharon. Thank you, Sharon. You're going to make me cry. Melanie says, my ex always told me he would hear God talk to him all the time and would yell him things like he shouldn't ever get a cell phone or that I wasn't close enough to God. Yeah, I don't know. Like, is that the voice of, if that's a voice of shame saying that you're not close enough to God, that's not the voice of God. As we talked about last week, the love of God can be convicting, but it's not accusing. It's not shaming. That conviction is an invitation that maybe we can do better, right? It's not, you will never amount to anything in your life. That's not what the conviction of God is. The conviction of God is, sometimes we mess up. And somebody recently said maybe the voice of God is very close to like what your conscience is. And hopefully you've got like a good conscience. I don't know. Maybe some people don't. I imagine some people don't. I don't know. Good and bad. I don't want to judge it. But the voice in your head that says, right and wrong, maybe that's a voice of God. I don't know. But if that voice is leading you to despair, leading you to think that you're not worthy, that's not the voice of God. The voice of God always comes to you because you are made in the image of God, infinite sacred worth, the God who loves nachos. Thank you, Jonathan Foster. And I don't know. I mean, to say that you weren't close enough to God is not a helpful frame, Melanie. And The point is that God is close to you. That's the point. I'm not close enough to God. Maybe. I would love to be closer to God, but the point is that God is close to me. Cliff says, I read an article this morning about how God/Jesus iconography was almost outlawed, but a guy, can't remember his name now, argued that if God was okay making Jesus his mirror image, then it should be okay for us, and that by creating, we are partaking in his glory. Yeah, that's the iconoclastic controversy. Mid 500s to 700s, there were early in Christian history, there were people who said, icons of Jesus or God were idols, and you should just destroy all of them. And there were Christians who worked against this because they would say, obviously, to me, that those icons are not idols. They're not God, but they direct our attention to God. They're symbols, and symbols always point beyond themselves to something greater, right? And so that's what those icons are. I've got some icons here in my office somewhere. Maybe I took them to my home office. I don't remember. But anyway, they're great to meditate on. The best ones, remind us of what it means to be human and the sacredness, the image of God that we are created in. I got the icon of the resurrection tattooed on my arm so I could carry it with me at all times. And that's the resurrection icon where Jesus descends into hell and grabs Adam, the first man, and drags him and all of humanity out with him. And sometimes I need that divine rescue mission in my life. Sometimes I feel like I am in hell and I need Jesus to come save me from it. Sometimes a hell of my own making, and sometimes life circumstances. Sometimes I just need Jesus or somebody to come sit with me in the hell, and sometimes I need Jesus to come and grab my hand and drag me out. So yeah, icon. I know it was iconoclastic controversy. Is that it was some kind of icon controversy? You can Google it and find. Yeah, there were people went around destroying all the icons, and fortunately that didn't last super long in Christian history. So, happy 16th birthday to Smokey the pup, princess. Happy birthday to your puppy. Oh, Melanie says he's my ex for a reason. Good. Cliff says God will not say you're not close enough. He would simply say, come closer. Yeah. I like that frame, Cliff. That's good. Awesome. Well, friends, was that worth doing? Here we are. So hopefully it was. You're doing a great job getting through this life. Find some joy. Dance. I'm not a dancer, but I could do more dancing in my life. So anyway, you're doing a great job. Thank you for being there. And yeah, we will do this next week on Good Friday when we talk and discover Christianity is so weird. There's this book called that I read a couple years ago, many years ago, called A God Torn to Pieces. And boy, Christianity is so weird because it says that we tear God to pieces, kill God. I don't think any, no, I am not aware of any other religion that would say that humans can kill God. God in the flesh in Jesus. And God comes back and says, "Peace be with you." That's what I think Holy Week is all about. So, friends, hopefully we won't tear one another to pieces. That's the point. To not to not do those kinds of things. But anyway, what am I saying? You're doing a great job, and we'll do this next week. Uh let's see. Cliff says, yeah, that's right. That's right. Dan, I need a signed copy of Gold Bond Foot Spray by Shaquille O'Neal. Dan, if you get that, let me know, because that would be awesome. All right. Melanie, thank you. I'll feel better. I'll feel better. Jessica says, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. That was the SNL skit. Yes. I was like, what did they say in that SNL skit? Yeah. So I just when I saw that in high school, I was like, oh my gosh, that is so funny and so cheesy, and I will never do that. And here I am. How old am I? I'm 45. And here I am. I'm good enough. I'm smart enough. And doggone it, people like me. Let's go. All right, friends. Hope you have a great rest of the day and a great week. And we'll do this again next week. So until then, God be with you.